Maybe we do the warm-up game just off stream, just to get us.
We could just.
Sometimes Kobe and I would do like an improv game right before this or that. Do you want to do mind meld?
What's mine? Yeah, let's do mind
Right.
meld.
We
need an
know how
improv
it
game.
works?
What do we do?
You say a word.
Yeah.
I say a word. We both hear it. We try and think of the word between those two words and say it at the same time. And if we get the right word, we meld.
That's
meld.
crazy.
Okay, so we're both just going to say a word. Okay. And then you two will do one after Drakos and I meld.
Okay.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Rainbow. Okay.
3, 2, 1. Pride. We nailed it.
Dude, let's go.
Holy shit, they're on page.
I'm not going to
We're not doing this. You guys think of a different game.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, baby.
Omelet.
Shit.
Baby omelet. I mean, that's something.
Okay. Come on, let's do this. 3, 2, 1, breakfast.
Jasper.
Damn it.
So now you keep going. What are the next two words?
Oh, no, what is it, Jasper and breakfast?
Okay.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, Jenna? Damn!
Ham Jenna?
Okay, I think we got this one. We should have this
Jenna.
one. Ham and Jenna.
3,
2, 1, vegetarian. Yes!
Nice. Good job. All right.
Bill, do we have that recorded? Yeah. Can we take that as an excerpt? Welcome to the first Worlds episode of Divephoria. Divephoria will be covering the entirety of Worlds, featuring a wide variety of members across both the Dive and the Euphoria
Talent.
podcast.
Nailed it.
And other people.
And other people.
And
And
other
just me.
people. Which is you. All right. The people today, it's available on the same places that it's always available. Wherever you listen to the Dive or Euphoria, it will be available on those same platforms. And we'll keep you guys posted as to when episodes are going to be coming out. We're following the world schedule, so it may be a little, honestly, all over the place. We're going to find out. We're going to see.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay. I'm immediately going to start a debate. Why do you title Euphoria episodes
You've asked me this so many times.
Season 1, but I don't think I've ever done it on your set.
That's
and
a
I
lot of
forget the
pressure.
answer.
What do you mean?
So
Jatt,
for instance, the Dive has been going for 3 years. So
Okay.
they're in season 3.
Weird flex, but I got it.
Yeah.
that's fine. Great, cool.
The Euphoria, I don't know how long it's been going on, but aren't you on season 4?
Yeah, so
How long has it been happening?
look,
4 seasons.
4 seasons.
How long is a season?
It doesn't really.
It's
Does
a
that really
split.
matter? It's inconsequential.
okay.
It is
Yeah.
so. The reason that it happened is because so season 1 we didn't have video, and season 2 we was a big swap.
That-
and
okay,
so we
that
wanted
actually
to
makes
mark
sense.
that, and then we're like, well, crap. Now we kind of just have to do this forever.
Yeah.
And so I think it's fine.
And then there was a
Okay.
twist where I killed Deficio and then joined.
And then
that
it had to be a new
happened-
season again.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? That's fine.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry for being so aggressive.
No, it's so aggressive. Why is it season? How dare you, Jatt? How dare you come into this house and ask questions before I even get to introduce you? That's Jatt,
Second
by the
question,
way.
maybe it's just a loose bit of trivia.
Okay.
Who had the first English-speaking
I know, it was the
league podcast?
OPL. It was the OPL
Oh, okay,
podcast.
just wanted to
Thank
make
you,
sure.
Jake,
Yeah, no
for
worries.
joining us,
Thank you.
host of the OPL podcast,
Was
the
that
original.
the first?
It
I
was.
feel like someone had done it
Really?
before.
No, for an English broadcast
Ah, okay.
for like a league,
Right.
100%
Made a
it was us.
podcast.
Yeah.
See, we're so mind melded. I knew he was going to bring that up.
Yeah. There's a lot of mind melding going on. Me and Jatt, we're synced up.
You guys were real quick in your mind meld.
That's fair. To be fair, I kind of didn't understand the rules completely,
To
so
be
we just
fair,
started again.
I think I overthought it because after you said Jasper, I was like Jenna, but then I was like, omelet,
We've
ham.
now peer pressured our producer Phil into editing a segment
no.
to put in the front of this video.
Or
where
just
none of
getting
this
ready for
conversation
this
will
part of
make-
the conversation, to be honest.
That's fair. All right, so we're coming right off of plans. We're recording this on October 9th, so we just witnessed some Splice make it into groups with
Yes.
confidence.
Qualify for groups.
They did qualify for groups. That is what happened. In addition to HKA, we also saw Clutch and Damwon in the previous day. So before we jump into kind of the draw itself, some impressions from plans, because some of those best of fives were, clean. Some of them had positive score lines, but weren't that clean. Some of them were nail biting and almost a disaster for Europe. Some of them. Won't specify which ones, you can guess. So, what are the actual thoughts? What do you think are the big takeaways for specifically the 4 teams now heading into the group stage?
I think the groups ended up being appropriately seeded. That was the first time, literally everyone who was seated higher ended up winning throughout the whole thing. In standings of group stage into what happened in the best of fives, even though it seemed like the games themselves are way closer, my biggest takeaway was I feel a little bit bad for UOL. I think they proved they were the best team to not make group stage in winning not only 2 games against Clutch, who then 3-0'd their best of 5, but then to also take Splice to all 5 games. I think that was really impressive, and they were super close.
I'd absolutely agree. I also think that we're starting to learn that, especially with young international team, there is no shame in being a little bit bloodied or bruised as you come out of play-ins. We've seen that at the last couple of years, this has happened, hasn't necessarily impacted groups' performance either. So I think that, they're actually better off for having gone through a couple of hard-fought series, especially if you're like a team like Splice that is returning to Worlds for the first time in a couple of years. I think that this actually makes them better as opposed to seeding more doubt into pundits' minds.
And I think I'm just really happy as an LAC fan to take a step back from being a Worlds pundit that, like, honestly, Unicorns of Love just kind of, like, clearly had a winning formula in Game 1 and then for some reason in Game 2 just threw it aside rather than going for scaling. Like, tried this Thresh, Ashe, Skarner composition. Because that game was so ludicrously close.
It works really well because you can attack Splice in setup. Because Splice is such a slow-moving team that if you actually bring an abundance of pick, which you have Ashe Arrow, Thresh, and Skarner there, that, again, if you just hit Splice first before they get to their actual set play, then you can actually cause a lot of damage for them.
And I was really happy that UOL did that because I think the biggest criticism I had for these playing teams is that they just allowed the better team to get their setup. And then once you're in your setup, it is so hard to drag people out of it. So I think that UOL, that's what, to me, made them the best play-ins team that didn't qualify for the world's main stage, is they were actually willing to try and get people out of their setups, even when they were behind. And I think that shows like a really good understanding of how to play League of Legends in its current state.
Yeah, for me, I felt like they had a success winning formula that proved to be a winning formula later in the series. And I wonder if they had drafted something different in that game too. And maybe
if they had chosen blue side in game 2. Blue side won every single game in that series, and UOL opted red side game 2 after winning blue side game 1.
I don't think that UOL's problems over the course of the series were draft based, and I think that that's what a lot of it doesn't even have to be Unicorns versus Splice. Basically, like any game ever that has ever gone to 5, everyone always brings up like a wonky draft, and ultimately, especially in that series, it was noticeable that it was a gameplay issue. It was a fundamentals issue. When you lose multiple Barons, you lose multiple Elders, you lose multiple Dragons, you don't have objective control. So fundamentally, you were the weaker team. And going and pointing at a draft is just like such a band-aid to what their problems were and why they couldn't go the distance.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about how do Unicorns of Love be the best team in the world or how do Unicorns of Love even be better. I'm saying how do Unicorns of Love come out of that series on top? And
better fundamentals. They needed to have better objective control. There's absolutely no excuse that Xerxes should get multiple Barons and stall out those games like that.
Sure, absolutely, and that's totally fair. Except the thing is I think draft is the thing that people can point at that's like, hey, these are 3 different picks. This is something you could have done differently. Whereas fundamentals, it's like you know what the finish line looks like, but you don't know what the steps look like to get there. You can't know. It's not like you go walk into your coaching room after game 1, you're like, guys, fundamentals, they got to be better. You can't walk in and say, guys, we're triple banning Chachi from here on out. We're taking every scaling pick we can, and we're going to rely wholeheartedly on Splice's inability to close a game.
I guess I just mean that no matter how many times UOL changed up their draft, I think if you play 100 games, Splice is still going to come out on top because it doesn't matter what happened in the draft.
Yeah. I think Splice, if we played a 100-game series, this is probably a bit enough to do on like this best of 5 and play in as we move into group stage. I feel like if they played 100 games, Splice probably wins like 70 of them.
Yeah.
Likely.
And I think that's the thing. Is it's like at the end of the day, I think Splice were favored to come out on top. I see this window of opportunity for Unicorns of Love where they found a weakness, and I think they could have continued to exploit it. They tried to over the course of the series. It would not have made them a better team at the end of the day, but it could have made them the winning team in that series.
Okay, so separate question, and I always like to do this. So we saw that Clutch were better than UOL, and we saw that ultimately Splice were better than UOL. Is there any team in the best of 5 format that was a seed 1, because they were a second seed, that UOL would have beaten to make group stage? Because this is the ultimate argument to your everything came out as seeded. It's like, well, the group system is flawed.
Yeah. I think the ultimate team that people will go to is Hong Kong Attitude and say that if it was HKA versus UOL, that people will be like, UOL went to 5 games, so of course they would have won.
So you're not giving them any shot versus damn one. Let's just start there first.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So do they beat Hong Kong Attitude?
I think that is closer to a 50-50. Okay. It's too hard to tell with these 3-team groups.
Yep.
But
I will say this. Tierwolf made this amazing point on the desk where he talked about how if you look at Crash doesn't interact with his laners. Crash is always taking dragons by himself. He's always invading by himself, and his lanes might follow him when they're interacting. But if a wave gets like frozen against mission, or a wave doesn't get bounced properly, other teams will pull their jungler to fix it. Crash will not do that. And then if you look at UOL, Ananasik will. They play very well with their jungler, and even if it's kind of bending to his will, at least it feels like in the early portion of the game, pre-15 minutes, that UOL are playing full 5 members, whereas HKA, it feels a lot of the time that they're not, because Crash actually just isn't participating. So jungle matchup, I think, depends a lot there. And if there was a stylistic way to exploit that, I actually think it's in that jungle matchup and the fact that Ananasik plays with his lanes and Crash plays by himself.
And I also just think that what we saw in the groups, and for the most part, kind of in that series between Hong Kong Attitude and Isurus Gaming, is just like the ability to end is difficult for all three of the teams we're talking about: Isurus, Hong Kong, and of course, Unicorns of Love as well. And UOL's drafting strategy and No Man's picking a scaling pick and having a jungler that I think is more active and interacts better in the early game feels like a surefire path to success. That said, I did not expect HKA to come out as first seed whatsoever. And I feel like every time I doubted this team, I managed to find the win. So they're doing something right.
They just had better players in key roles.
Yeah. I mean, okay. This is the people watching this episode would probably want to see the group stage, but
we're gonna get there.
The play-in group stage, just for the people that didn't watch play-ins, was very close. Even Hong Kong Attitude nearly lost both of their games to Mega, right?
Yeah.
But they did win because they were better players. They had slightly better macro. They had slightly better fundamentals in some ways. Those advantages, I don't think will carry through to the group stage. But again, every year we need to kind of do this test because teams that come out of the play-in have actually done very well in the past 2 years.
Yeah, and I think that ever since the rise of the Gigabyte Marines, now known as GAM Esports, I think you just always have to respect the playing teams because you can never be sure. Because sometimes it looks wacky to you, sometimes it looks crazy, and sometimes it just turns out to be very, very effective, especially in best of one.
But it's a very different strategy to take, because with GAM and a lot of their success, it came from these crazy strategies that we saw Loki pull out against Damwon, pulling out the lane swap. And so there's kind of two different avenues here. You look at the Plains teams or the Plains representatives, and they constantly and consistently are better because they have cleaner fundamentals, they have better micro abilities and like key performers, or they pull out a ridiculous strategy where they say, we cannot compete with you on a fundamental standard League of Legends, so we must break the game and turn it into our favor. And low-key, that was completely dodging the fact that they didn't want to lane against Nuguri and try to snowball the Tristana. So I think there's two different avenues. I like both of them, but obviously, like, playing the lane swap every time or playing like the Nocturne level 6 gank at like 2 minutes in the game, very difficult to execute multiple times.
True. I also just think like high variance play styles and crazy strategies are just always going to be good in best of one. And I think if your goal, as we've seen in the past, is to like the smart team from the respective minor regions never goes far. The team that's considered to be like the best macro team domestically very rarely goes far in the tournament because I think when push comes to shove, it's hard to then.
Are you talking about plans?
Plans team, from the plans team perspective.
Because I was going to say SKT dominated
No,
for like...
No, I'm not talking about SKT. I'm saying like, because like very often like we look at the CB law in the past and you've heard like we've had representatives that have been considered the smart team domestically and then they go up against, you know, another region and it's just like, well, they're getting outclassed in lane matchups or... I mean,
Isurus was a perfect example of that. Unfortunately, Seiya and Audi had glimpses of hope, but otherwise Seiya ran it down in day one. It was just not a good look and you can't individually collapse like that. It doesn't matter how smart you are if you give your opponent a massive lead.
Yeah, completely agree. With that in mind, though, we can look. We had the groups draw. If you haven't seen the results yet, I'll run through each of the groups before we start the conversation, starting with Group A, G2 Esports, Griffin, Cloud9, and Hong Kong Attitude, the most recent addition. Group B is Fun Plus Phoenix, J-Team, GAM Esports, and Splice. Group C is SK Telecom T1, Fnatic, RNG, and Clutch Gaming. Group D is Team Liquid, AHQ Esports, Invictus Gaming, and Damwon Gaming. So just before we like get into the nitty gritty of each group,
is this the most stacked world we've ever had?
That's a good question.
Because I feel like all of these groups, because the Western teams are getting a lot more respect, now people are like, wow, all these groups are really stacked. Like we don't actually know who pops out here. Whereas before it was like...
I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of who's popping out.
But before it was like, if you got a Korean or an LPL team, you just like, okay, that's GG. Like now people, I think, are more so on the edge of...
So like define stacked, because is this how many teams do we feel like have a fighting chance to get out of groups in the past? Because I have it at like 10 teams when I was going to this, maybe 11 would have the fighting chance depending on how good J Team ends up being.
J Team's good.
Yeah, I think J Team could be good. We'll end up. I mean, all right. I think Group B is super easy.
Yeah.
I think Flash Wolves dominated the LMS for half a decade, and then last year every team that wasn't Flash Wolves failed to win a game in the group stage. So when Flash Wolves essentially gets absorbed by the LPL, and then J Team ends up being like the top team, I have a really hard time saying with confidence that they're going to be good. They're definitely going to win a game in that group. They'll probably be second is what I have them down in my pick'em, but I just have a hard time seeing them like pay that forward in the bracket stage, right?
I think that you do have to take into account a couple of things with the LMS in terms of like how quickly you can recover from something like what happened with Flash Wolves. And I think proximity to the other Asian regions, very good solo queue environment and very good scrim habits, as well as relationships that they've formed with LPL teams and still access to very good coaching staff, from my understanding of how the region works, does allow me to believe that you can bounce back within a year. And I think we've already seen that to a certain extent. Like people were saying that Hong Kong Attitude just weren't even going to make it out of play-ins. And then they show up and they're a pretty consistent team, right? And they make it out. So I actually probably have more faith than others, especially in J-Team. I think that if you go undefeated in a domestic region, you deserve at least some respect coming into Worlds, regardless of what level your domestic region is at.
Sure, absolutely. But I think to Frost's question, if it's not the strongest, is it the closest that you think it's ever been? Is this like the most contenders? You said 10 teams. Does that feel like the biggest number that we've like ever seen to actually people could viably get out?
I was thinking of last year. We had 2 LCK teams, 3 LPL teams, 2 LEC teams, and 1 NA team make it out. And like the teams that people would have expected to have like a fighting chance to make it out would have been Team Liquid, who didn't do it, Samsung, who didn't do it, which is 10. And then like going into Worlds, I don't think people were really expecting Vitality to make as much noise as they ended up doing, so they wouldn't have counted. Would there have been another team that I'm missing to push it to 11? Because if we do count J Team as that team, there would be 11 teams fighting for 8 spots, which does feel like it's definitely pretty much at its height. So I'd say it's the most stacked.
I mean, I'm just
probably also closest.
Looking through the groups. I mean, Group A, everyone outside of HKA, I feel like can make it out of this group. It's the Group B. I think everyone can make it out. I expect Fun plus Phoenix to be first, but past that, I think you can really make an argument. I don't expect Clutch to get out of Group C, but any of those other 3 teams can make it out. And it's a similar story. I don't have high expectations of AHQ, but IG, Damwon, or TL can all make it out of that group, and that's crazy to me.
How much respect are you giving to Cloud9, or is this the choking story that we're taking away for Griffin to say that Group A just isn't a 2-horse race? Because when I see first seed from the LEC and defending MSI champions and the best and most dominant team throughout LCK regular season for the last year, I say Cloud9 has no chance of getting out of that group. So, unless you take into account choking.
So low percentage, I completely agree. And I think I am not taking, it's not just choking so much as like not complete choking, but it's best of ones. It's super volatile. I haven't seen Griffin kind of adapt to an international stage yet. So all I'm saying is there's a lot of intangibles, and I think based solely on last year when Cloud9 was in the group of death, when it was like, all right, EU and NA will handshake on just both not getting out of groups and at least neither of us have to feel bad, and they did manage to make it out anyway. Now this is even more difficult than Genji RG. I'm not saying that this is like a reasonable assumption. I'm just saying it is possible.
So the thing is like I like to build up group of deaths to be group of deaths, right? And in my head, G2 and Griffin should be heavy front runners to come out of this because you've technically nearly got 2 first seeds. A lot of people would have nearly expected Griffin to be the first seed of the LCK. So you've nearly got the 2 first seeds of the 2 best regions in the world coming into this tournament. So I understand I'm supposed to be on the dive portion of the Divephoria right now.
Hey, listen.
But I'm going to fight my battle somewhere else, I think, when it comes to this.
I would love it if Cloud9 makes it through. They usually manage to overperform the expectations, but the expectations are there for a reason year over year. And just because we were surprised last year, right, doesn't mean that Griffin is a weak team. Now, there's a lot of people. I think we should get into Griffin, actually.
Give me a number on Cloud9 first before you get to Griffin.
Percentage
number
chance
to get out of groups.
Yeah.
So we did pick'ems before this. I'm just going to say, well, this will be a conversation for later. My Group A pick'em will be Griffin, G2, C9, in that order. So
you're giving them very low then.
Yeah.
When Vedius and I were prepping Cloud9, and we kept trying to figure out, why does Cloud9 keep performing well when other NA seeds tend to fall back, especially when it has kind of an ever-changing roster. And I think it goes back to kind of the support staff and infrastructure that Cloud9 has really built up, and that they have cleaner fundamentals. So when Vedius and I were trying to measure like what a team's fundamentals are in different categories and how well they perform to it, when you look at them versus TL, Vedius and I feel that Cloud9, if you want to call that the smarter team, the better fundamental team, are better in fundamentals, but individually, talent, pound for pound talent, TL would just muscle them out every single time. And TL had a much more limited style that we saw domestically comparatively to Cloud9, but because they had better players, they had practiced their style better, that they were always going to be the better team. But internationally then, when you're against so many different variants and you really just need to kind of fall back to your fundamentals, that's why Cloud9 would always shine. And I just wanted to like give that respect to the support staff behind C9, which is why I'll never really count them out, because I do think they're an intelligent team and know how to take information from scrims, fall back to fundamentals, and train themselves up on international stages.
So if you go back in history and look at every time Cloud9 has managed to make it out of a group where you feel like they shouldn't have, it's because they have always beaten the team they are supposed to be better than, right? Pretty much 100% win rate. So in this case, they're probably going to 2-0 HKA. And then the theoretical is, okay, can they take a game from one of the other teams?
Yep.
Because that'll probably put it into a 3-3 situation. And they've even had times where they've been in 3-3 situations against other teams. And then because of just how tiebreakers fell, it's like, well, I guess they're through. So that's the way Cloud9 gets out. But so back to like your number point, 15, 20% chance to make it out of the group. Yeah. Could definitely happen. I would be very surprised.
On top of what Frosky is saying, I also think that Cloud9 has had some of the best world's meta patch reads ever. Like when you think about when they first brought Viger to the international stage and they were just running these crazy siege comps that you could not engage on, and it like completely busted. And then as soon as people figured that out after day one, I think they like went like 0-3 the next day that they played on.
Isn't that where
like
the O10 meme comes from?
Absolutely it is. So, but I think like I just want to like continue and like kind of build on Frost's point, is I think that this is a team that has had like really good ideas when they come into the World Championship and then being able to execute on them as well.
Yeah. But if we talk about taking care of business against teams, Griffin being the number one regular season team in the LCK 3 splits in a row, like, yes, they lose to SKT in the playoffs. They did it both times. And there is a fear, it's a valid point to say they're, I think, 1-6 in their best of fives, like actual game score in the finals, and that allowed them to qualify for Worlds. It's because they've been so dominant in the regular season. And then the fact that they've lost their coach is definitely a red flag, but it's one that I'm willing to live with for now, because I feel like the thing that carries Griffin in part is how good so many of their players in Tarzan, Chovy, and Viper are extremely strong individually. And if the things that I've heard about Griffin and the way they practiced, where a lot of the times they drilled so hard that they were actually trying not to talk to each other in game, like the coach left fairly recently. I feel like a lot of that stuff can carry through, even if he was a big part of it. And if he's not, then it's going to be fine.
And whilst I might not be as ambitious as other people on this desk, if I'm a League of Legends team and the only team that can beat me this year is SKT, I'm still pretty confident that I can take down Cloud9. Like, I don't think Griffin are all that worried about getting out of this group.
Okay.
Because that's what it is. Everyone keeps saying they keep choking. Yeah, they're choking against SKT. Like, SKT, even in MSI, they were real good.
I do think that first and foremost, before I get flamed, I recognize what you're saying, and I agree. I have Griffin getting out of this group. I do not think that they're going to be upset here. But I also believe that when you take young players out of their domestic region, you put them internationally, you put them on a very different stage, very different time zone, very different schedule.
There's a lot of variance.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's a lot of variance with
it
this
can
Griffin team.
really mess players up that don't have the support structure around them. And so my question is, do Griffin have the ability to neutralize all of that variance and get the domestic performance? Because domestic performance Griffin on that stage, you're like, oh shit, like that's terrifying. But I just don't know what it looks like. And I'm not trying to attach the label choker to them or anything like that. It's just any other team. Splice, the same question. They are a bunch of very young, inexperienced players, and we saw how shaky they looked in play-ins, and now going into groups. Damwon, I think people expected a lot more out of them. And while Nuguri and Showmaker still looked amazing, there were still a lot of questions. Canyon also has a lot of hype around him. So I don't think it is completely out of the element to say, hey, we expect this is Griffin's ceiling. They can be an incredible team, a dark horse to possibly win the entire tournament if they don't run into SKT in a best of 5. Or it could be that maybe they don't get the right diet, maybe they don't have the right sleep schedule, maybe they just are upset by traveling internationally, and then you don't get that incredible individual performance.
And just to compound on that, I think that those unknowns for Griffin, I think are the primary reason. Like Cloud9, yes, they deserve a lot of credit, and Griffin just has a lot of unknowns. That's like the bottom line. And I think that's the thing is like also no matter how good they look in group stage, we're still going to ask the question going into best of 5, right? Because they're not the SKTs of the world. They do not have this track record where you're like, I trust that they will adapt to the patch. Even if they go 0-3 in the first week of groups, I know that they will turn it around and they will get out of groups and they will kick ass when they need to.
Because I always play this game, right, where when I try and decide how much better of a team I think another team is versus each other. So in this case, we'll use Griffin and Cloud9. If you told me I'm from the future and Griffin won Worlds, I would say, you know what? I can see it. They had a really good run through tournaments. If you said I'm from the future and Cloud9 won Worlds, I'm like, how many visas went wrong? Like, what happened here?
Who could not get into the country?
Where was the power outage?
Exactly
But it's the
right.
same thing. I'm not telling you Cloud9 are winning Worlds. I'm telling you Cloud9 are getting groups. If I told you Griffin didn't make it out of the groups and I'm from the
So
future,
you're saying G2 are not making out a group then?
hold on. If I come from the future and
I'm
I
just
say
saying, you're supposed to be on
Cloud9
the Euphoria
make
side
it,
of this.
you calm down. I'll get my bias in. Don't you worry, sir. If I come from the future and I say that Cloud9 made it out of groups and Griffin didn't, you're like, okay, that's believable.
I'm kind of like, can you go back and delete a little bit further, delete this Euphoria podcast?
All right, I mean, that's Group A, right? It mostly clear cut, maybe potentials for upsets.
Wait, did you put Griffin over G2?
No, I put G2 first. So my theory is until you beat the defending champion, they're the defending champion. I kind of treat League of Legends like the title belt, and I think I've been pretty consistent throughout the entirety of this. I did it very heavily with EDG, quite famously. That didn't work out great.
I still get
What do you
blamed for
think
that.
about IG then? Have they lost their title belt?
Yeah, absolutely. So I said going into MSI the exact same thing, that I thought G2 were going to have a really good shot. And then I kind of flip-flopped on that because I thought SKT really ramped up and I expected them to win that. But I came into that tournament with no one will be able to touch IG. And I stand by the fact that in that group stage, IG was still the scariest team.
Yeah, they actually had the best group stage of any team in MSI history.
Yeah,
They went
people
9-1.
do not acknowledge how good IG were playing in that group stage. They were running over teams.
And I think that while what happened between IG and TL is amazing, that is an incredible story. I also really hate the narrative that ultimately means that TL will just beat IG again, because IG got a lot of flack for losing to TL. If there's one team they will not lose to again, it is TL. I'll say that the day that they face, I will go to my grave saying that. Until TL actually faces Invictus Gaming where IG aren't just straight running it down, I will never say that TL is the better team, even though they beat them in a best of 5. And maybe that pisses off a lot of NA fans, but I'm like, you faced a team where they had the worst best of 5 of their careers. Now, give me one more game and then maybe I'll start to swap. But otherwise, I'm like, it's an amazing upset, but I think Invictus Gaming are the better team.
And I think then let's just go through that entire group, right? We'll skip ahead to Group D. We'll kind of gloss over Group B, aka Weenie Hut Jr. For now. Which is doing discredit to FPX.
What did you say?
I said Weenie Hut Jr.
What is that?
It's
Is
a
that
SpongeBob meme.
SpongeBob SquarePants. It's like the
I am-
chum bucket where all
I'm
the
like
buff
2
guys
years
hang
too
out.
old to understand
Weenie Hut
SpongeBob
Jr.
references.
Wait, how old are you?
32.
Holy! What?
Yeah,
What do you do to your skin?
He's bathing in the blood of Invictus Gaming members, just like
I'm
this
just saying,
something youthful.
Invictus Gaming members.
Because TL beat them.
Oh, there you go.
That's
Okay.
what that
I was like, the continuity is just
like-
getting dark.
Every team that NA has slayed, Jatt just goes home and he's like, this is how I stay young forever.
IG is the youngest team at the World Championship. Their average age of 19.2.
That
if
is
Leon
something
starts
that
in the
someone who
jungle.
would bathe in the blood of youth to stay young would know, Chad.
He had the Freak of Freaks
video.
last year.
Yeah,
He's
you
just-
the immortal Jatt. All right, let's just...
Anyway, yeah, sorry.
So-
I apologize. That's like, I'm going to age out mainly because of SpongeBob references being no longer.
I mean, it's fine.
yeah.
You miss SpongeBob?
I didn't watch it.
So like
I wasn't a Nickelodeon kid. I
I'm trying to
watched
think
it
of
in my teenage years.
an older show. Are you like Street Sharks?
Street Sharks was also
I watched
lit.
Simpsons,
Okay.
Family Guy,
Okay.
Yeah.
South
Classic.
Park.
There you go. Good.
Okay.
Yeah, Dragon Ball Z.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
The cartoons of my youth just didn't include
fine.
SpongeBob.
You watched South Park as a kid?
I did too.
This explains a lot.
Your parents
actually.
are very irresponsible.
I got like
Jasper
season
is not
9 as
watching South
season
Park.
9 as a 10th birthday present. Yeah, it was
Your parents
questionable.
are also very irresponsible.
My mom will come to this country and she will smack you upside the head. Just be careful, Jake Tiberi. She's a fearsome woman.
She's so lovely. She wrote me like a
She would never hit
3-page
you.
letter.
Yeah, she'd be like, "Oh, I'm sad he said that," and I'd be like, "No."
She'll like send you chapstick.
Anyway, the Drakos' Mom podcast is episode 2, so we'll stay on.
I love you, Jamie.
All right, so Team Liquid, AHQ Esports Club, Invictus Gaming, Damwon Gaming.
Is this the Weenie Huts?
This is not the Weenie Hut. Group B is the Weenie Huts outside of FPX. This is rough for Team Liquid. Did this immediately, you as the NA representative outside of Jake's
who you
occasional
got-
bias.
Who you got coming out of this?
Yeah.
Was this just like, you're like, this is the worst thing that could possibly happen to me?
So one interesting thing I think about coming back to casting later in the year is I now feel like I have a more divergent opinion from the other casters than I had in previous years because I haven't just been discussing everything with them 24/7 the whole year. So even though Team Liquid has Core JJ now and they have Jensen right now, I think this group is just super hard, so I don't favor them getting out of it. Mainly, I think, because of the way I actually look at IG. I think a lot of people look at IG having a very bad summer split, losing very early on in their summer split playoffs, struggling through the regional qualifier, and seeing the 3-1 that we just talked about at MSI and thinking, yeah, Team Liquid's got the edge in that matchup. And I don't necessarily think that's true because I look at Rookie and IG in some ways as like a, Jake mentioned this earlier, and I'm just going to say it here, like a sports player coming back from injury. He had a personal tragedy halfway through the split. He missed like a month of scrims in practice. So he's still ramping back up. And I know where IG's ceiling is. It's dominating world champions of 3-0 semis and 3-0 finals. And I know that's higher than TL's ceiling. So if they can get close to that, I just have to favor them going into that group and say that they're going to get out of it over TL.
In the same time, I think that TL would be quite happy that they drew Damwon. And now the reason I'm going to say
Compared to
that...
Splice?
Well, no, obviously you would not want to have that. But I
Yeah.
think that if there is a lane that they can play through, it's their bottom lane. We've seen that Damwon will struggle with this, even in play-in stage. And they do have the brick wall that they can throw up in the top lane, seemingly at will. And Impact was able to have a very good performance at MSI against a very good top laner in the Shy. So I think that, there are key aspects of that series that you can apply to other series in the future if Impact does play at a good level, if he is able to, throw up that wall versus Nuguri, and if Core JJ and Double Lift are able to run over Nuclear in the bottom lane specifically, because Beryl out of lane is still very good in my opinion, then there is a way that it's actually Damwon that we're talking about, which is very strange because I think that there is a lot of hype around this Damwon lineup. But I kind of agree with Frosk that IG are one of those LPL teams that when you get them frustrated, they kind of just do like bulldoze you one game and just really flex on you and show that they are superior to you even on a micro level. And I just think when I go down the lineup, like I'm not even confident that they have a bottom lane advantage anymore. Where going into MSI, I would have said maybe. After watching IG's bottom lane play the entirety of the summer split, like I'm actually pretty confident that's heavily in IG's favor now.
Stylistically, I would have said that the one place that TL can really attack is in the jungle because obviously you have the swap that's happening for Invictus Gaming. Which jungler? I believe that they brought both of them. Which jungler are they going to start? What are the junglers going to look like? Lan is like brand new, so you have no idea what he'll look like on an international stage. But unfortunately, if I was going to pick the weakest role in TL, it would actually be Xmithy. I don't think that they have a strong jungler comparatively to the jungle talent at the tournament. So it's like normally Invictus Gaming just kind of bulldoze you through their superior laners and the Shy, Rookie, and now Jake alluding to Jaculov having such an incredible recent performance and kind of all over the course of summer. But I actually don't think that TL can then even punish where they should be weakest, which is in the jungle position.
And the thing is about IG is if they play at their best, Jatt can jungle for them. Like, this is a team that their laners are so incredibly good
Yeah.
that you get a Phoenix
back
Stance
the
Udyr.
Udyr.
and
I might
Udyr.
even win World's MVP.
You
is what I'm saying.
might, you might have a shot at taking it.
Yeah.
Because, like, I just going back to what you were saying about the dominant world performances.
Right.
I do think people sleep on the fact that at their best, the Shy and Rocky are both in contention for the best player in the world, and they're on the same team.
And I mean,
That's big.
we still hold on to this is that like from talking to Whippo and to a little bit Wonder talking about scrimming.
Whippo has been scarred by whatever happened
that's
to
our
him.
favorite story, which we bring up every time. Is Whippo's just like, this is you just
lose.
lose. You just get destroyed, and you just like are left wondering, and then you take the opposite side of the matchup and you get destroyed again, and you're like, everything I know is a lie, and every time I think I have a matchup figured out, I don't, and
Yeah.
it's just like
So-
the Shy is terrifying.
Yeah, rather than talking about controversial stuff, just focusing on those top laners, it's actually really cool that they're in this group together.
In which
Yeah.
Nagri versus the
Nugri-
Shy.
Oh yeah.
I can't wait to see that matchup because if we think about Coach Kim from Damwon, I love the fact that this is the case. He's basically got two players that are extremely similar to each other. This amazingly talented, but completely like uncontrollable top laner, where they will just feed, and you can't really tell them not to because, well, he did feed, but he created a lot of pressure. So really, I got to weigh those two things against each other, and
I do wanna
kind of
say-
seeing who can win that matchup. I would love it if we just stopped junglers from being able to
Just
gank
a
that lane
1v1.
for like 15 minutes just to see who would win.
I will say that I see that people are giving the award to Nagri and saying that he's just the superior Vladimir, the best Vladimir in the world. Exactly. I'm like, you haven't watched a lot of the LPL. Like, he's an amazing Vlad. Do not get me wrong. But the Shy's Vladimir is disgustingly good in the best team fighting region in the world. Like, you want to see some crazy Vlad plays? Just go type in his highlight reel. I do not think that is a hands down award to Damwon already.
What's the percentage on specifically against the Shy that Nuguri stops taking kleptomancy and starts taking something for combat stats in the lane?
Ooh. What if they both take Klepto?
That would be fun.
Just start, and then just solo
actual
kill each other.
handshake. They play
Yeah.
like Ornn Maokai.
Well,
They
they'd just be hitting each other. It's like we both want as much gold as possible.
That's actually my
You
nightmare.
press tab, you see the inventory, it's all just full, and they're just
You're
like,
Yeah, they're both sitting on full clutch items. Don't consume them. We need to go back in base and get gold for these.
It's just like you guys are wondering why we're like 3,000 gold ahead of the curve right now. It's just a disgusting amount of gold. It's because top lane are actually just not taking minions as they auto each other repeatedly.
Yeah. No, that is going to be that's going to be one of my favorite things of this group stage. And to the other point, like I do think this could be one of those groups where we see a lot of volatility. Like the first
I think this
time,
has most
the
upsets
first time
in it.
IG plays Damwon, and if IG smashes them, that doesn't mean game 2. Oh, they really figured them out that game. It's just there's not figuring out the way that some of these games are going to play out.
Also, it's just like so easy when you're thinking about the groups holistically to forget about, even though it is a very small period of time between part 1 and part 2, week 1 and week 2 of groups, like historically a lot has changed. Now, admittedly, once again, not nearly as much time, but teams with a day off to look over the games, to like get another look at the meta, to adjust, usually looks vastly, vastly different.
Yeah.
So, yikes.
Okay, so my pick'em was Damwon, IG, TL, AHQ.
I think
Can you just repeat that one more time for the audience?
I'll do it in reverse. AHQ, TL, IG, Damwon.
AHQ,
I did.
TL, Damwon, IG. Yeah.
Invictus Gaming, Damwon, TL, AHQ.
Yeah, Frost, you, big Brandon.
Okay, so it's the same. Basically, you're just saying you're going to say TL third. These are your actual pick'ems because pick'ems don't need to line up with power rankings,
No.
as we've seen in the past. You're trying to maximize your pick'em points.
You got to try to figure out where the upsets are going to be.
Yeah.
Man.
What did you have, Drakos?
Invictus Gaming, Damwon, TL, AHQ.
Okay.
So I feel like I've said 2 controversial things at the start of these groups, and you haven't made me elaborate. I said Griffin was going to win Group A, and I'm saying Damwon's going to win Group D.
I feel like you're putting me on the spot.
Yeah.
So, okay, so do you want to know why?
Okay, why?
Because I'm just like actually terrified as an LEC representative.
You're scared?
I'm nervous. So the thing is I have like
You and Vedius are such cowards. You just like you hear one thing and you just like immediately flip flop.
how are you not more scared? LGD 2015.
Okay, first
You've
and
been
foremost-
burned worse than any of us.
No, hold on. While we're going to talk about that, because every time it gets brought up, I always get flamed. I wasn't even on that broadcast.
Yeah,
Are you
were.
sure?
No, you would definitely.
Wait,
be.
No,
okay,
that
hold
was
on.
100%
Hold on.
this guy.
I remember an
Yuri,
LPL ref.
Deficio, all of them made the claim, and yet I'm the only person who gets flamed. Every time it comes up, I just link them all.
Do you want to hear something even more inflammatory? I
Yeah.
said this to Jatt the other day, and I'll go on
Okay.
the record.
Oh, geez. Okay, sure. Go
Jack's
for
like,
it.
I don't want to be on this
No, I
record.
remember this. I remember this.
I said that if LGD had have made it out of that group stage,
The one that they went 1-5 in.
the one they went 1-5 in, I'm still confident they would have won Worlds.
Let it go, dude. It's just like, come on.
But it was
No,
also
because I've seen, back to the meta misread thing, like I've seen it happen so many times. I think individually, that LGD roster was so damn good.
so good.
They just had a really crappy week.
That's all it takes, though, is one bad week.
Yes, but guess
Yeah.
what? Like, I have faith that
Also,
G2 will
the
not have
only
a
reason
bad
I flame
week.
you specifically is because you sat in my home in Portland
Yeah.
and showed me VODs and preached the good word of LGD.
Oh, you mean I backed up my statements with analytical proof?
Oh, no,
yeah,
and
I
And how
got
much
it.
good did that do you?
Yeah.
No, that's all I'm saying. All I'm saying is like you like converted me to a religion and then just later showed me that there was like no God. That was like a very very disappointing series of events. You're like, surprise! None of it's real. I made it all
I'm
up.
just gonna say,
It's a spaghetti monster.
I was in line with every single analyst. The fact that my name's the only one that gets brought up, all of you.
So, whoa. Okay. Yeah, escalation much.
Okay, so let's go back then. Let's hop around, Jack. Give
Okay.
me
You
give me
keep
your
that one
Griffin
in,
story.
Phil.
I'm nervous. That's what I'll
I've
say.
read some comments because I teased this opinion on our World's Cooldown show.
Oh, to
Tease
clickbait people in.
beat
Yes, I
people
appreciate
over the
that.
head.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
yeah.
that.
And I read a comment and someone says like, man, Jack gets so tilted whenever someone says G2 will win Worlds. I think that's totally a fine opinion to have. I think
Because you are furious. You're just absolutely angry at all
no,
times.
sorry.
You're like, I can't stand this. That's a fine opinion to hold because I am filled with righteous rage anytime you tell me that EU is good.
Wow, that did come out wrong. I meant to say it's totally fine if you say G2 is good. And I am not filled with righteous rage. But I mean, people interpret what they want. up there.
seething. Look at it.
So the reason,
Okay, you break it up. I'll finish.
yeah, so I was going to say the reason people are very nervous about G2 is G2's attitude, I feel like. It's
the-
not
Yeah,
G2's
100%.
skill set. It's just whether they decide that groups is already over. So they can have a couple of happy games.
Wait, no.
Here's
I
the
have my
annoying thing
favorite
to me
line.
though is I think if you're saying like, okay, what are the actual picks to win Worlds? It's SKT, FPX, and G2. And I swear everyone that I've heard say it on broadcast, generally, aside from like the episode or this or that or talking to Spawn, has been like, yeah, it's close, but I think I'm gonna go with G2. So I just remember so clearly what we just talked about in 2015. I just want to say like, hey, and you're scared, but I just feel like that hasn't been put out. I feel like so much of the media has just been that we consume has just been saying like, oh yeah, G2, they're the favorite, right? They got the best early game of everyone. They got 5 great players, et cetera, et cetera. And I actually think that there's a high chance they don't win, even if they're powering top
I think for me, I'm just like on a very personal level, just like winning MSI was really cool as a European fan, as someone who's followed for Europe for a long time. And like, it feels too good to be true that they've kept this form, that they've looked good. And then I'm so ready to just be like shattered. So all it takes is Yankos being like, hey, we're losing all our scrims, into, hey, we're winning some scrims now, for me to be like, was this a fluke? Was this a thing that just happened one time?
I'm going to tell you, and this is completely a derailment, but LEC fans were really happy that G2 won MSI.
You think?
Anyone that worked with a team was real grumpy because all of a sudden all your players were bringing you the stupidest shit to try on stage because G2 can make it work.
Frost,
This is-
okay.
Sorry, I was going to say this is a team that I think has very high variance because of their willingness to try things. And I think that the experimentation is actually their biggest strength and their biggest weakness. And if they get it right, they're 100% a crack to win it all again.
Okay.
Frosk, what did you draw?
I agree on that.
I always get flamed for this.
Visual representation on a podcast. Yep.
Visual
Let's
representation
explain
of a
this.
podcast. So basically, it always goes down to variance and consistency.
Can I explain what you've drawn here before you continue?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so she has drawn a graph where the y-axis is ability.
Is Y the one that goes up?
Y is the one that goes up.
Okay.
Got it. And then the x-axis, so the one that goes across, is likelihood. So I assume this means like, can they do it versus how good is it when they do it?
Yeah, it's basically ceiling versus consistency. Yep. So, and I don't know why this seems to be such a controversial opinion, but my opinion is that the ceiling of G2 is, this iteration of G2 is unreal. It is almost supernaturally good.
LGD-esque.
But the I hate you. But the likelihood and the amount of times that we've actually seen them hit it is lower than a team like SKT. So I would say that this iteration of SKT has a lower, slightly lower ceiling than G2, but a higher likelihood of hitting that ceiling. And this is how I feel. So when people ask me, who do you think will win? I say G2, because I'm like, in a theoretical perfect world, if every team is playing at their absolute best, I think G2 is the best team. That doesn't mean that I think that the gap between G2, SKT, and FPX is massive.
What if Griffin is playing at their absolute best?
Ooh, that's interesting.
Because we can use this argument to apply to G2, and like we've seen that in times from Griffin, but just never in a best of 5.
I think pound for pound talent-wise, Griffin do not have as good of players across every single role that G2 do. I think that in certain positions, they actually have superior players, but I think that's what kind of makes G2, to me, so supernatural. I know people think that we're just biased and they get tired of
What
hearing
about
it.
IG?
Jungle position, I think, is again kind of an issue. And Ning is very coin flippy. I think he had a great tournament, or back half of the World Championship tournament. But if you look at Ning in the front half of that tournament, literally running it down.
Yeah. He ints a lot, and so I got a 17-year-old.
That's not a phrase I thought would come from you, Jet. Yeah, he
I spent
ints
a lot of time in Europe.
I respect it. Welcome to the family.
But it's like we're playing with that slim of margin, and I think unfortunately the media doesn't help us. Like I did probably over the course of plans and finals, probably 10 interviews. And in every single interview, I'm saying the exact same thing. But that's now whatever.
It just gets printed again and again and
G2
again.
are going to win, G2 are going to win, G2 are win. But like the nuance of that is, again, this is going to be super close, very back and forth. I expect it to be matchup dependent. Like it could just be that Grabs just ints drafts 5 times, then G2 get blown out. I'm like, yeah, I could totally see that happening. So it's not like when I say G2 are going to win 10 times that it's like, yes, G2 are going to dominate. No, this is by the slimmest of margins that I even get to consider a Western team has a shot at a world championship.
And I think that is almost like too appealing, and I feel like that draws people towards predicting them. Right? Because I was there when Misfits was up 2-1 against SKT, and even after SKT won Game 4, Dash was like, "Do you want a flip flop on the desk?" And I wanted so badly to be like, "Yeah, I want to call the downfall of Korea." So I said Misfits would win, and then they didn't because SKT's better.
The Trundle pillar.
Right?
Well, SKT's better.
In Game 4, it totally could have happened. Right? And that's the other way of looking at it, right? So I can see why people get so impassioned about it, and I can see why I'm going to uninstall Reddit and Twitter after this podcast.
Oh, 100%.
Especially once we start talking about Fnatic. But as far as
Just
G2 is concerned...
TSM isn't here, my friend.
What?
I said just be glad TSM isn't here.
Yeah, because then they'd clearly be the highest ceiling team of all.
They're also such a likable team, G2. Like you want them to win. When you like look at the content that you put the players put out and then like their interviews and stuff like that. As someone that's not from the LEC, I really like what G2 is doing. And I think that coupled with being a good team makes you want them to win even more because there's personality behind like this brilliance for the first time.
I first met Jankos in 2016. I think he was doing analyst desk at the All-Stars. He's awesome, right? I think he's been a top jungler for an extremely long time, and I'm glad he's getting recognition. But I also want to point out the ways where it could go wrong. And I think the one thing we haven't necessarily mentioned about G2 is I think the summer split is almost, to me, it's close to unusable from an analytical perspective. Because Kazakh's top, Soraka top, they were happy games the whole time.
And they still won. They still won the split.
And they still won, which definitely shows how much talent they have. But it means they had no way of practicing peak performance. They were just experimenting for 4 months.
I think
sometimes that can pay off. Like there's a chance they actually in the back of their heads had the read and they're amazing and they've been practicing it during the month off and they're going to crush. But like it almost felt like they were just chilling and messing around, and it is hard to turn that switch back on. Some teams can do it, some teams can't.
If we're talking about high performance just really quickly, do want to credit from what I've heard behind the scenes, they've done the right thing. So they moved the player's location. That's the first thing that kind of re-triggers this. They did boot camp. They've brought them back in enough time to reacclimatize to Berlin. The players are very comfortable from everything I've been able to hear. So I do think that whilst you're absolutely correct, the support staff behind G2 has done everything as far as high performance philosophy. We've got a couple of guys that we work with at my club. So yeah, I think like that is very much on par with like the best sports teams in the world.
I think the thing is it's hard to take anything from the positives because you see them smash, and it's also worrying because it does still feel like you can take negatives away from their 2 best of 5s with Fnatic.
I think that's only if on what you're measuring. So the thing is like analytically, okay, so if we break the team down into like different buckets where it's like micro performance, macro performance, champion diversity, and then I would put synergy.
Sure.
And I think it's very reasonable that when you look at Summer Split, you can be like, that macro wasn't great. Like, what is that read? And oh, this guy, Crap showed up this game. Ding the micro there. Or what is this draft? Kazakh's top. Like, yeah, they're flexing, but there's also viable options about like, oh, I think that was a bad matchup that they tried and it didn't work for them. I think at the final, the fact that Caps kept trying to play a certain side of a matchup every single time until he was finally able to break it. But it's that last category, synergy, that I think that people aren't really, like, it's the hardest one to measure, but actually makes G2 such a formidable, I can't say it. Formidable opponent because, and I always credit Papa Smithy because he said it on air, but in the 0.5 second to make the decision, G2 always make the decision together. And even when we saw other dynasties like SKT at their highest, they over-indexed in all those other things. Their macro was amazing. Their micro from Faker was incredible, unlike the world had ever seen, changed the game completely. But they didn't have the same synergy that this G2 roster has. And I'm not then trying to say that this G2 roster is better than the SKT dynasty because it's not true. But when we're measuring the teams, like, it will be such a disappointment if we don't celebrate some of the incredible things that we're seeing. We will never see a team with this type of synergy ever again in a League of Legends team. Like, it's unreal.
Yeah, it's highly unlikely. And I think that that's the thing that they talk about that makes them so difficult to put 100% of your faith in them is because when they do well together. The team plays, and it's like there's not even time for them to talk about their plays they're making. It looks...
I've listened to those comms. It's not like they're talking about,
they don't
if I bounce the wave and do this,
it sounds like any other team fight where they're just screaming stuff, but the moves are happening so quick. And the difference is that when they int together. If someone goes in on a bad play, they trust each other, right?
Yeah,
and that's the thing that you absolutely need. And I mean, the casual philosophy of it is, hey, it's better to make a bad play together than to make, like a good play alone.
Yep.
But not always. Sometimes you don't need that other guy to leap in, and I think that always makes G2 feel very volatile. But outside of G2 and Griffin, I mean, we shift our attention. We'll do Group B last.
Wait, can we play a game? Can we take the break, halfway break?
Can we take we're already so deep.
We're like, what, 45 minutes in? 50 minutes in?
50 minutes in, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can take the break.
Okay.
Before we do Group B and Group C, so we've played this game before on Euphoria. You haven't played it yet.
Have you played the game with like cards or celebrities?
You're used to playing games.
It's similar to Blind Man's Bluff.
We write it on the whiteboard behind you at high school, I think.
I don't know. It's got a lot of names.
Okay, so what's interesting here...
Close your eyes.
So for context, there's a bowl full of names consisting mostly of players at Worlds.
Now you hold it up to make sure that you don't see this, Jake.
So the people that are watching on stream can see the name. The people on podcast can pretend they're Jake, just holding a piece of paper on their head.
Yeah, now you got to guess from our clues. So you're not allowed to say player names, you're not allowed to say teams, and you're not allowed to say regions. And
can we say champions?
You can.
Well, he just banned all his champions in the best of 5.
Huh. Visit Chachi?
Hey. There you go.
Well done.
Nailed it.
Okay, Jatt, you're next.
This was as bad as when they gave me a Kali at the
Is it the right way up?
All right.
Man, Riot sucks about top lane.
He would very much disagree with your design philosophy on his champions.
What?
He's not actually at this tournament.
He's not at this tournament. There's 1 or 2 wild card entries into the pool. I know what, right? I know.
Give me another. I think I know, but I want you to keep guessing.
Right through the Counter-Strike.
Shin.
There you go.
Why did you put a Shin in here?
I was like
This is the
typing
world.
names, and I was like, I'm just gonna throw in some random names. So I threw in
can't see, so I
Hashin
don't
Did you
knock
see
over
the
glass.
video?
and one more.
Every time Hashin
Shin dies, it
it's
speeds
faster.
up.
You need a
Oh
flip.
man. Okay,
'Cause
sorry.
right now you're no one. Okay, you need to flip it the other way now because now you're upside down.
Hold on.
You guys give really obvious hints.
Yeah, you gotta.
I'm really
That's
bad at
the
this
point.
game.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Lowest win rate. God, I can't do that's
Is now at Worlds on his third different team from his third different region.
Cody-san.
lowest
No.
win rate.
Different region.
Lowest win rate
Close.
Lucian in the world, probably.
You can't say champions.
Oh wait,
He's on the same team as the
it's-
player you just mentioned.
Third
are you kidding me?
Played on
Hold
SKT, went to the final.
I don't know those memes.
He's been to World semifinals. He's been to World Finals.
Interviews,
Won
he's
the
He
side.
start
changed
good,
the meta in
mediocre
his
in the
famous
middle,
matchup versus
and good.
Smeb when he changed the way Riven into Fiora was being played.
I have no idea.
Okay, wait, Frost.
Interesting.
I could start naming all the top
This
laners.
player does
Yeah.
interviews. They start strong and they end strong. In the middle is like
Huni.
all over
Yeah.
the place. There it is. How do you not know holo? Like, come on.
I don't know memes. All the streams,
Close
like
your
the
eyes,
Twitch,
Drakos.
the Twitter stuff, hate it. Mute all of it.
Just take one.
Is this one?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
one.
Is that right?
Flip it.
Keep it that way.
This way?
Popular streamer, cosplayer.
Sivir.
Oh, yeah, sneaky.
I thought you couldn't say champion names.
You can't. I think you can't say champion names. I thought you
Okay.
might be able to. It's just too obvious.
Yeah.
Because there's too many signature picks.
Do we keep going?
Yeah.
Ah, wow. This is just fun for everyone.
Jesus.
You're gonna
Oh,
flip
you
that one
hate this
over.
guy. You thought he was bad for a long time.
Definitely
lots of
died to
people have-
Raptors in a very crucial moment
You
in the
guys
series.
are super mean. He's
Oh,
a very
it's
high.
Toynbee. Yes. Oh.
The most iconic Yasuo death I've seen in a long time.
Why did you? You can't give away that I hate Toynbee. These people don't follow me on social media.
So the joke is that Spawn used to call him Doing Bad because Rusty and I were always amazed by Doinby and his victor, and he's like, he's not even that good. Now Spawn has joined the dark side, and he's
have.
aboard the Doinby hype train.
So a little bit of a sneak preview for everyone. There's going to be a top 20 release later today. And with the criteria that I have in best player in the world, even though I have been very critical of him in the past, I would put Doinby number 1 in my top 20 players this year. There you go.
I'm doing it with Vedius. He's high.
Can we all just get a round of applause to thank God Spawn's not on there if he's going to put Doinby as number one?
That's fine. It's rude.
Jerk.
You've incentivized me to ask follow-up questions, but there's like a time budget here, and I'm not trying to go all
Okay,
in
is
on
this
the
the right
Doinby
way?
hype
Didn't
train.
press hourglass.
Jensen. I'm good at these games.
Come on.
Do one more for Frost, one more for me, and we'll
That
wrap up.
is.
I can't believe you didn't get Huni.
I like Klepto.
Nuguri.
Yeah.
I would have also gone, name you have to be very careful about pronouncing every time you see it.
Doesn't it say
So I
mean
think
raccoon?
It's Nogari.
Noguri?
Yeah.
I know it means it's supposed
Nogari.
to mean raccoon. I don't know
Atlas
why.
trolled this really hard because
He did troll us.
I'm gonna
Atlas
mess this
keeps
up.
doing things where he's like, this is the Korean pronunciation. Then we ask someone later, and they're like, that's definitely not the Korean.
Well, it's like it's between a U and an O sound.
Noguri. Nuguri.
This guy was ranked extremely highly on ESPN's top 20 list.
Really good at pressing R on Kaiser. And sometimes not really great at
Got
pressing R.
smashed by Reckless.
Wait,
Yeah, in World's group stage last year.
Very young, was
But
very
then-
famous for his scrim record against Uzi.
Yeah. Beat Uzi a bunch when he was like 15 years old in scrims. There was like this giant bidding war about getting this guy.
Jacula?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Very well done.
Thank you.
Nice job.
That took way too long for me. Not quite
Yeah.
hola, but
As
Come
soon
on,
as you
you know
talked
he's
about the
Kaiser
interviews,
plays.
I immediately got it.
the thing is everyone's playing Xayah and Kaisa now that it's like hard for me to think of iconic.
He has a Kaisa
He has a
skin.
Kaisa skin. But again, we're really mixed
I
up on
think
the
they
rules
should give
of
it
this game.
away.
Yeah.
We are. You know what? The rule is there is no rules.
Okay.
Just don't look at the piece of paper before you start.
What you got? It's
guessing.
Jacula. I think it's Jacula. Nailed it.
I can't believe I forgot Jackie Love has a Kaisa skin. Oh my god! I
Can you
have
name
that
the other
Kaisa
world
skin
skins?
with the signature, and I have played it before. That's how bad that is.
It's a really good skin.
Can
It
you
is.
name
I like the IG
skins?
skins. All the IG skins.
Yeah.
It's Fiora, Camille, LeBlanc, Rakan, Kaisa. There's one more. I don't remember what the other one is.
Oh, you got it.
Is that it?
Wait, did they give Duke
No, there's
one?
7. That's the Duke is the Fiora one, right?
No, Duke isn't Fiora.
Duke got a skin.
What's Duke's skin?
Did Duke really get it? I'm Googling.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he got a skin.
Because Camille, it's Aurelia. Aurelia is
Oh, you're right.
Aurelia is the one. And there's I might be wrong about the Fiora.
No, it is Fiora. It's Fiora, Aurelia, Camille.
Because Fiora's the extra one, right?
Because it's Ning's Camille. Jungle Camille.
There you go.
Not top lane.
That was an abomination. I'm glad that's gone. That was Blind Man's Bluff / unnamed naming game / it probably has an actual name, but we don't know what it is.
I enjoyed the games that Jatt brought more.
Oh, the Mind Meld?
Yeah.
Mind Meld was good.
I got another game.
Oh, let's.
Do you want to? All right, that's fine.
What is your most overrated? Like, so we kind of generally have an idea of who people think is a good team. Who is your like most overrated team personally? So I'll start this. Like, which team do you have? I'm doing a really bad job explaining this. I'm not saying who do you think is overrated. It's who do you think is really good that other people don't think is that good.
Okay.
So it's a positive spin.
Okay.
You said you were going to go first.
I did.
Yeah.
Then you
I've already done
looked
this.
at all of us.
Yeah, I already did. I think it's Griffin.
Okay.
Okay.
So I've already explained it because we already had a Griffin topic. I think I put them top in the G2 group, so that's already.
And you're gonna pick the team. Go ahead, say it.
I think I'm going to surprise everyone here.
Really? I'm gonna say Fnatic. Is that surprising?
Okay, yeah, that is surprising.
That is surprising. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that one as well.
That's our segue into Group C, so you'll go last.
I'm going with another team from that group. I'm going to say RNG, that people are sleeping on RNG.
Absolutely.
It's crazy. I'm going to say Clutch Gaming. It's just everyone's in the same. I'm not saying Clutch Gaming.
Who are you going with?
I actually don't know. Fnatic was the one that I think I could have fought for the best.
Do you want the reasoning behind this as well, or is it just fun if we just float it out there and leave it to the ether?
I feel like it's so that's what's going to happen in comments anyway, but just do it now for the people that actually listen.
Okay, so for the people that are still tuning in and have stuck with us, you deserve to be rewarded. And I'm going to go with the fact that RNG maybe still have the best bottom lane in the world when they play well, and that Xiaohu is much better than people remember him being, and is nearly as good as he was when he was really, 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 really good at that MSI that one time.
And what about their top
This
lane?
is very true. The only issue is that
which top laner? They used all different top laners, but Lang X or Xiao Al or
they
he was
pronounce
Xiao
it-
Al when I was in the
I think
LPL.
it means like wolf something.
Yeah.
Raz messaged me.
So if Frosk always says this the best, but I feel like I don't need to justify this guy because when I casted the LPL, he was just a monster on a terrible team. And he has not changed being a monster, and now he's on a good team. He does play weak side now, however, which I don't think is necessarily strength, but I don't think it matters in a lot of the matchups. So I have him rated really, really highly. But then I feel like I've been talking about him for 3 years, so it's not really new for me to say this. Yeah.
Or Xiaohu.
Xiao Al.
Xiao Al. He's very.
Yeah. RNG's top laner, it's Long X if you're looking at like players or Leaguepedia or something. Yeah. So
I think it's like long. I can't.
we're going to have to get that pronunciation. We got Atlas to help us.
His name's Nuguri.
Yeah.
Shield.
For Nogri, Atlas literally
Dale.
said it and like he typed it. It's like N-O, like Nug.
No good.
It's pineapple.
And it just confused everyone because everyone's like, all right, it's just like Nug every time. And it's like, no, it's Noguri.
Let's just add some context to why I think Xiao Al is good. He played with a guy called Hacker, Fen, and Yoon, who no one has ever heard of, and still made playoffs at the LPL.
So Xiao's been around for a while. He was previously on Suning Gaming, and as soon as he debuted, it was kind of the idea from the Chinese crowd and other fans, like EDG were trying to snipe this guy for a long time. They have been chasing Xiao Al. Everyone wanted him because it's like he's going to be the next going. So in terms of how RNG lost last year with where Xiaohu and Let Me just didn't have good reads on the meta, got individually abused in their solo lanes, and it didn't matter if he had Uzi or not, RNG cannot lose like that again. They have too far talented, and where Xiaohu is actually performing, he is probably the most disgusting Zoe I've ever seen. It's amazing.
Rookie Zoe, though, is so good.
There's also scouts. There's 3 amazing Zoe players in LPL. And Xiao Al, the new top laner, is not Let Me. He will not get smashed in lanes. He can play carry. He can play weak side. Very versatile player. Very smart.
So then if we're shifting away from RNG.
Why Fnatic?
Why Fnatic?
So sell me on this because I want to be positive about Fnatic.
So I think that
I love Hillisang. That's my statement in a nutshell. You can continue.
So how much do I want to go into depth about this? I think Fnatic are actually a good team. Now,
I think so too.
I don't think that there's a reason why their name doesn't come up for me when I'm talking about like potentially who can win the tournament. Because again, there's a lot of variance and factors that I can't attribute to, like how will Nemesis perform. But when I see things like Twisted Fate consistently getting buffs and Twisted Fate being such an amazing pick into so many of these assassins like the Akali, I'm like, wow, Fnatic by the meta alone actually just got a huge advantage, because if people don't ban this champion, like he will force you to do that. And I think A, right out the gate, that's something to get really excited for about Fnatic. B, they went to 5 games with G2. Something that I credit them a lot to is their ability to problem solve and read state of map during game. This is not a set play team like Splice, where they come off of resets, they know theoretically what they should do and try to play League of Legends by the book. It's that when you put in these changes, they are very good at playing adaptable and reactive League of Legends, because they have enough experience across the board and they have enough talent across the board that they can hit with the best teams in the world. So I think the meta really suits them. I think that they're an animal that have a pretty clean identity and play style now that is very refined in practice, and went toe-to-toe with one of the best teams in the world, G2, 2 times in best of 5. So I think if people aren't giving Fnatic respect, that they're overlooking a potential powerhouse that has just as much right to get out of this group as SKT and RNG.
And additionally, like the way that they prepare level 1s in early games are not only creative but very effective. And I think that that's something, especially in groups, obviously helps in best of 5 as well, but in best of 1, really they will win games off of level 1s, and they have repeatedly in the LEC.
So I made the comment that I'm really happy for people to say Fnatic is a very good chance and a world-class team if you think that G2 is the best team in the world.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I'm giving them a lot of respect, because I can't quite put my finger on it. I also want to mention the fact that Cassiopeia is just disgusting when Nemesis plays.
Nemesis also
He's like
amazing.
an old school Cassiopeia player. You know, like run you down and just like keep like trying to outplay everyone running at him. It's really, really cool to watch. So if you think that, however, if you don't think Fnatic has a shot, I think you also have to bring G2's hopes down a little bit, because I think that there wasn't all that much daylight. And I've heard some things around Happy Games not wanting to give things away for Worlds and like lots of conspiracy theories out there. But I also know League of Legends players quite well. When you get on server, you want to win. So I think that they definitely were putting like everything into that whilst they were in game. So I'm really optimistic about this Fnatic. I'm also super excited to see Broxah play on an international stage again. Personally, as a jungle fan, as a Lee Sin fan, Broxah is just one of those players that like I could watch him play for hours on end. I think he's an absolute superstar.
Yeah. So let's round that out then and just talk about Group C pick'ems. Because ultimately, if your faith is in RNG, then do you not have Fnatic getting out of the group?
Yeah, unfortunately, and I really want them to get out. So people are going to be like, oh, Spawn, against Europe again. I think Europe like got some really tough groups. I got G2 obviously winning Group A, so please bear with me. But I think SKT and RNG are 2 of the teams that I think can actually win the whole thing. I think that this is one of those groups, however, that could be in one of those tricky 3-way tie situations. If Fnatic is as good as I think they are, unfortunately, I don't have enough data to support the fact that they're going to be able to stand up to SKT and RNG. But I really think that, you know, this is a group for me that I look at, and I think this is the one that I have the hardest time actually telling who's going to get out. So I had SKT, RNG, Fnatic, Clutch.
This is like an analyst stream on the other side of like the group, where you get to talk about like how it all went down and break down like how it matched up. Because I feel like not necessarily that this is a rock, paper, scissors, but again, play style wise and stylistically, SKT, RNG, and Fnatic are such different teams and how they attack that I really do feel this comes down to draft, to execution, to on the day every single time. Because I do think that the teams are that close just because of how different they all think about the game and they attack it. And, you know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe SKT just rock into this group and actually just blow everyone out. Or maybe, I don't know, Reckless versus Uzi, he gets just like hard blocked again. But RNG versus Fnatic, you have Reckless who's picking up picks like the Garen, like the Karma, and playing so much more weak side, where this is no longer Reckless getting so many resources pounded into his lane where he just gets to be mini Uzi, versus Uzi, who Karsa's going to gank his lane 6 times in the first 6 minutes. And so it's like...
And he's going to bring 2 teleports, and he's going to bring his mid laner half the time, and then,
So do Fnatic actually try to get like the Xayah, the Rakans, and try to match that and survive? Or do they play like the... For example, the Garen Yuumi, where Hilly, or Karma Pyke, where Hilly just like pieces off on Pyke, and Reckless is there just trying to like pull the doors closed. Like stylistically, that is so cool. What happens? Does Karsa break Reckless? Does Reckless absorb it? How does that snowball the game? I mean, on either side of that, you're like, ah, shit, that's amazing.
I think there's an incredibly low chance that Reckless plays Marksman against Uzi. Like really low. Just after thinking about what happened every time they land against each other. right?
I wouldn't be surprised if there's at least like a small mental block there.
Well, I mean,
Where he can't, like, not that Uzi isn't outclassing him on honest terms, but just that, like, with the history that they have, that Reckless probably psychs himself out a little bit.
well,
going into
also
that lane phase.
the team has been more likely to do non-marksman bot lanes than most teams in the LEC. I'm looking at 7 Karma mid games, 3 Karma bot games, 3 Garen bot games. You look at his solo queue, he's playing Syndra, Veigar, Mundo. He's actually getting enough non-marksman that you can't ban out his non-marksman if he gets them on the stage.
My greatest meme dream is that Fnatic win Worlds and Reckless gets a Karma skin instead of a Tristana skin. I think that would be like the funniest
After
thing.
once retiring because he said they nerfed AD carries too much.
I will
That
say
would be his arc.
that like I used to be really hard on Reckless and not be super impressed with him. Now that I've been in the LEC and I've gotten to take a closer look at him, especially with like the addition to ProView, something that Reckless doesn't get credited enough is, again, people might not understand when I say he plays weak side really well, but his ability to make sure that the wave is bouncing, is held near his tower when Broxah isn't on that side of the map, when Hilly has to roam from the lane, his ability to time his resets correctly so that when Fnatic need to make a play elsewhere that he's always in position, like the things that Reckless does really well are almost invisible to a lot of the average viewer because it's really easy to understand when Uzi's like Goomba stomping on kids and like getting a pentakill, and it's really hard to see when you don't get resources and you don't get kind of time on day and map, how you're able to maximize that and neutralize your opponent. And that's something that Reckless does really well.
If you want to have a great example of it, just go back and watch how he played against IG in group stages last year of Worlds, because that laning phase, IG thought that Hilly was there the whole time, and Hilly was there like 20% of the time, and the other 80% of the time was ganking Rookie, and Reckless was still even in CS because he knows exactly when Hilly steps on vision, so he needs to be able to back away. As you said, he's back timing he's very disciplined in how he goes through the steps, and that was the Worlds where I gave him a lot more credit as well. I certainly think he's grown as a player.
So, question. So, even though we've said a bunch of really positive things about Fnatic,
Is
still
something
don't see them
lifting
getting
off over there?
still don't see them getting out of the group, yeah?
I have them getting out of the group.
I have them getting out
Who
of
do you
group
have them
second.
getting over who? Frost?
RNG.
I have what? You have RNG.
You
on
both
that?
have them
SK
over RNG.
Telecom, in first seed and Fnatic in second.
Okay, so this is the group that I had to predict the upsets on.
So you're predicting it as an upset.
As an upset, I have predicted Fnatic, SKT to come out of this group.
Fnatic
in
first
that
seed.
order?
Yeah,
That
Fnatic
EU
first.
fangirl.
basically, yeah.
Yeah.
So the thing is I'm trying to predict it in that SKT play a slower play style than G2 Fnatic do, that we saw domestically in the LCK. And so I'm thinking in a best of one, in the level ones that Fnatic prepare, with the meta being really favored to them, that they just grab more best of ones and would somehow pop out first in that group. Now, obviously, in a best of 5, Fnatic versus RNG, Fnatic versus SKT, I favor SKT and RNG every single time. But I think in a group this stacked, where it's probably going to be like 1-1-1-1-1 the entire time, because of Fnatic's way that they play the game versus SKT and RNG's play styles, I favor it in best of 1. And trying to predict the upset in pick'ems and get more points, I have Fnatic and SKT.
Convenient that you have Fnatic in the top in those pick'ems.
Conveniently.
So the problem I have with this is, like, Jake brought this up at the start of the Fnatic discussion, where if you think G2 is the best team in the world, then Fnatic playing them close in best of 5 twice would also put you having Fnatic as the best team in the world. But I'm so uncertain about G2, and my read is that they're not coming in as the best team in the world. That pushes Fnatic down a lot for me. And then adding that to the fact of just, and this is definitely an opinion that could get flamed pretty hard, but
I just said Fnatic were coming out first in that group.
well, I feel like
I'm
on
already taking it.
the Euphoria set with a bunch of pictures of Fnatic players,
don't worry.
I feel
They'll
like you're
find
on
me.
your home turf, and that's going to be an
Are you
alright thing to say.
insulted by the Reckless cardboard cutout? We can move the Reckless cardboard cutout.
I mean, we could just put them right next to Froskurinn.
We can get a double with cardboard cutout if it makes you feel better.
I predicted them third. That's why I left the card back home.
Baker cardboard cutout. We make a lot
I'll
of
take one of
cardboard
those.
cutouts.
I'll take one of those.
I
So,
do think also incredibly likely that they don't make it. Like,
yeah, I know. It's going to be, you're calling it as being a bit of a toss-up, but ranking the best regions of the world right now, I think it is LCK, LPL, LEC. Those are the top 3. Now, I also think that the LEC has been rated highly recently, and I can gauge this by the reaction. Even though the outward bravado of a lot of the commenters has been that they are rah-rah, the amount of complaints that I saw about Fnatic getting in this group was so high. And if you are the best region in the world, you are what makes the group hard, not the teams getting drawn into it. So I think this is a hard group because I don't think they're the best region in the world. And I think SKT is the best team and RNG is a super, super threatening team, which puts Fnatic clearly third in this for me. And I'm happy to be wrong. It'll create a huge amount of upvotes for someone. And I'm happy to contribute.
The man of the people.
Yeah, but just like
Jatt gets in there, upvote.
just like I really feel almost an obligation to provide the other side of this point, where the logic of Fnatic so recently being considered like, oh, we're fourth best, oh, we're fifth best. I think it's a little flimsy, even if they have great team play, if they do have experience. I think just looking at the two teams they're up against in this group, when I also have
They have all those things as well.
Damwon, Griffin, G2, FPX all above them, I'm putting Fnatic at like 6th to 8th somewhere in those power rankings. So it's possible for them to upset. I just don't think it's likely.
And the thing is, right, and like if you swap Fnatic and Clutch into with TL and AHQ, I think there's a much more compelling argument for the experience, these level 1s and things, to come out on top. But when you look at RNG and SKT, these are just veterans that have done it so often. And the coaching staff has done it so often. And they have been able to play on this big stage and have fantastic results, even in best of one. So I think that I'm a little bit more aligned on Jatt than this in saying that that is purely because I rate SKT and RNG so highly. Both of these teams are probably in my top 4 at Worlds.
So you have RNG 4th? Probably?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
That's
so.
a very fair statement to make. And that makes me very worried for Fnatic. But I would love the upset to happen as well.
Difficult. I do want to, as we are running out of time, I want to take over to Group B. I call it the Weenie Hut Junior, but I do think it deserves a bit of attention. Pretty easy. I would be
The
surprised.
two most winningest teams coming into Worlds in FPX and J Team domestically.
One of those teams I'm
also-
very much think is going to get first seed. The other one I'm not as convinced.
Also, for what it's worth, while we're going to get a very entertaining group A, C, and D, I'm
B is the
very
group
mad.
to watch.
I'm very mad about these groups. B is the group to watch. No, I want anyone from A, C, or D to just move into B. Any of the top threes from any of those
No.
regions should just scuttle on over there and make it a better
Well, the
group.
reason it would be interesting, because if Fnatic was in this group as opposed to Splice, let's pretend you could just theoretically swap teams. Like,
Yeah.
Splice could be like, you know what, tag, like, we're not going to make it anyway. You go do your best. I think, like,
That'd be the
I would love
nicest
to
thing
watch
to do.
Fnatic versus J Team in a best of 5.
That'd be sweet.
That would be cool.
I'm just saying, all I'm saying is that I don't know who's going to make it out. And as an LEC representative, that makes this group very stressful.
Wait, you don't know who's going to make it out of Group B?
It will be Fun plus Phoenix, and then who did you write?
I technically put J Team.
You technically, or you did put J Team?
Well, technically J Team. I wrote down.
I put Gam.
There it is.
You have faith in J Team? I don't have faith in Splice after that best of 5. I don't have faith in the LMS as a whole since the departure of Flash Wolves. And I think Gam, if they've anything they've proven, is that they can show up in best of 1.
I've watched more J Team VODs than I have GAM VODs. The GAM VODs that I turned into, I very quickly turned off.
That's the
agree.
thing. You can't read them coming into it because they're just fighting all the time.
Who did you have?
Who do you have coming out of B?
I have FPX J Team.
Yeah.
And then I have Splice Gam.
I have
Down the
Gam
line.
last as well.
I have GAM last as well.
Oh, man,
I have
we're so
Gam
anti-fun.
second.
You have Gam second.
I go Fun
love
plus
you, Draco.
Phoenix,
There it
Gam, J Team. I put Splice as 4th.
Okay, so instead of like, I feel like we should talk about how good FPX is, because I feel like a lot of people coming into this and, you know, putting my LPL hat back on, which I never really took off, but some people think I did. This is a team that won so many games domestically. And speaking to Jatt about it, this is a team that has to get on an airplane and fly to their games. And China's a very big area and they're traveling. And the fact that they've had this amount of consistency and that they've brought together so many players that on other lineups, I was so excited to watch play the game. LWX might be the best team fighting AD carry, in my opinion. Like at Worlds, and that's saying something. You know, you've got people like Uzi here. So I think like this is a lineup, and I'd love to get your take on it, Frost, because I know that you still really watch the LPL. Like, how good is this FPX team comparison to the other teams that the LPL has sent to Worlds in the #1 spot, and what makes them different? Because, you know, lots of people are going to know the Doinby kind of meme, like, you know, the scientific builds, but I think there is a lot more to this team. It's not just a Doinby factor.
I think you first have to start with the names that people probably aren't bringing up, because everyone will talk about Dwayne, and I think that is the bottom lane in LWX and Crisp in particular. I think the supports that the LPL are bringing are all incredibly talented and mean so much for the team. Stylistically, what this team likes to do is have winning 2v2 jungle mid and then rotate and have dive potential bottom. And so you'll see things like early on when Dwayne got on this team, like taking the Talon, and then literally the only purpose of the Talon there has nothing to do with matchup. It's like literally level 6, you're bulking it down bottom and you're executing on these dives. And so their ability to accelerate the game, snowball, and it's not just like, people use snowball almost as a dirty word that like, oh, they got a snowball off and then they just close the game. FPX are a team that really understand how to snowball in different avenues. And then once they have it, they just rip games away from you. And they play a lot of games and they are very consistent and very good at it.
And a lot of their players play everything. I mean, we said, Talon, he also was doing it a lot with Pantheon. He's got Ryze, and the new Ryze has got very good push in my opinion.
That was old Pantheon for those of you.
Yeah, exactly right. So they certainly run the same style of gameplay with multiple different areas. And then obviously they got Gimgoon in the top lane, who if you leave GP up is just legitimately willing to sit and not interact with anyone for the entirety of the game.
Yeah. I also think FPX is super strong. Just going to throw a question out there. We've had 3 teams go 6-0 in group stage. Samsung White in 2014, SKT in 2015, Longzhu in 2017. And FPX in 2019.
Absolutely. If they don't go undefeated, I'll be very disappointed.
Boom. I think so too, actually.
I have to agree. I was trying to think in my game fantasy land that I'm currently living in, when they make it out second.
No.
Apparently, I think it's a realistic thing. I really think you too much faith in J Team, in my opinion.
Also, the synergy on all of Doinby's teams. So Doinby's played with 3 different junglers, maybe 4. So Tian obviously being the most recent one. And the thing that Doinby really brings to a team is his leadership, shot calling, and synergy with his jungler. Every single play, even if it feels like FPX aren't in position or aren't in the correct setup for the play, it will start with Doinby in the jungle. It will extend because they are talented enough where everyone else will start piling on and they will obliterate you. And their ability to pounce, find you when you don't expect them to jump onto you is like, people will call it the stereotypical Chinese aggression, but it is like the X factor of this team.
And China's wanted this guy at Worlds forever. Like, even when he was on QG Reapers, like, they really wanted this to be a representative. They think this is a team that can do damage on the international stage. And just to go through some of the intangibles as well, fluent Mandarin speaker.
He does his interviews in Mandarin.
Does his interviews in Mandarin, streams. Like, really great bubbly personality for the team. Apparently, as far as everything I can see, like, people love playing with this guy. People will go out of their way to do it. So they've certainly got the soft skills as well. This isn't just a great individual team. It does have that feeling of, one language, the ability to be able to, continue to take over the map. And I think that all points to good things, because we've had these questions about other LPL teams in the past, and FPX, in my opinion, doesn't come in with the same questions we've had around synergy and around language barriers as previous, Chinese representatives.
I think the one weakness of FPX, or potential weakness, is how well Doinby will fit into the meta. And I've talked about this a little bit on the LEC, and you can look back at his career historically, and that's always just kind of been the one thorn in his side, where does he play what is in meta, or can it fit in the current meta? If the answer is yes, Doinby is incredible. If the answer is no, he refuses to change.
The Corki meta was real rough for him.
That's what killed the Chaogu Reapers.
So here's the thing. The Azir Corki meta was rough for him.
No, I mean,
they
the
still
first
didn't
time
drop
around,
any games.
When it was like Xerath,
back in the day, the old
Azir, that was not a great time.
Because he was actually able to kind of break through it this split.
I agree. The Assassins this time around actually deal with a lot of those champions much better, I think. So, and like with things like Kiana, Pantheon still remaining very high priority, I'm very hyped about Doinby.
I am as well. And I think for FPX, a lot is just going to be seeing in their group. I think they're very clearly the expected favorites. 6-0 is the question, not do they get out first. It's very indicative of what we can expect. But as a final thing, we reached out earlier today. Frosk reached out specifically to ask for some Twitter questions, and I wanted to get 1 or 2 in before we close out the show.
Before we do that, just really quickly. So I've got 1 LEC team coming out and 0 North American teams.
Yeah, I really hope that doesn't happen.
Is that controversial?
Well,
on this desk, no. Maybe elsewhere.
Okay.
Because
let me ask the question. This is perfect.
Ask the question.
All right. Kelt here, at Kelt here. asks, which region has the least and which region has the most chance of seeing its 3 teams in the knockout stage?
Yeah, you're right. We should have waited for the question. we can do some stuff with this tape,
This
right?
also allows me to make my point, so I'll go last.
You can continue now.
All right, so I'll go first. So I have equal amounts of LCK and LPL representatives getting out, which is all of them. Surprise, surprise. And I have the least amount of either North America or VCS, which is all of 1 and all of 3 getting out.
I have all 3 LCK teams getting out, and I have 0 North American teams exiting.
Okay, I'm definitely. I have three LCK,
And you have 2 LPL teams, right?
2 LPL and 2, because I basically traded RNG for Fnatic.
Mm-hmm.
I have 3 LCK, 2 LEC, 2 LPL, and 1 VCS.
I love you so much, Drakos.
Dude, they're gonna do it. I'm actually, I'm serious.
I hope
It's
they
just
do for you. I really do.
And this is,
How much do you trust Levi and Tinicum?
I really trust Levi and Tinicum. They've impressed me in the past. And here's the thing: it's that, and also a very, very sorry Splice, big lack of faith in the competition they're playing against.
Yep.
Like they can get Splice. If any team is going to lose a best of 1, it is Splice. Like I firmly believe that.
Mate, they were like first in summer for, or second in summer for at least like 7 weeks.
And then what happened?
Yeah, they recency, but like you can't just be like, they can't play best of 1. I'll just put on my positive poly hat and be like, actually, if you check the stats, they're actually fine at playing best of 1.
If you remember game 1 of that best of 5.
They literally only lost to teams below or above them in like Fnatic and G2 for like 90% of the split.
It definitely was not 90%. It would have looked very different.
I wasn't hot on
at the very
Splice
end.
coming into this. I actually predict a Splice upset. I'll be a little bit of a Splice apologist. This team is they're a fine to good team, in my opinion.
They're an okay team.
Yeah. They do stuff well.
All right, I'm going to tell you what I want. And then I'm going to tell you what I think will happen.
Okay.
Do you have to tell us what you want because it includes NA teams getting out?
Yes.
So that people don't think that you just hate your own
I
region.
do not hate them. I really want them. I've just been...
Whoever makes the comment.
Drakos, life is all about setting appropriate expectations. Have you ever heard the Bo Burnham song, Lower Your Expectations?
Yes.
Yeah. If you haven't, like it's a sweet song, do it. Lower your expectations. Anyway, what I want is 2 LCK, 2 LPL, 2 NA, 1 EU, 1 VCS. That would be the sweetest quarterfinals. It would mean that Griffin would have to get upset and drop out of that group. It would mean Gam would have to go through, and Fnatic wouldn't make it. Whatever. It's
fine.
Yeah.
Their fans won't mind.
Yeah, if I really wanted to get like full English PR, I would have been like, I want 2 EU teams and only 1 LPL team or something. But the point that I wanted to make was, in terms of what I think will happen, it's 3 LCK, 3 LPL, 1 LMS, 1 EU. And I wanted to elaborate just a little bit on some of the reasons why I think LCK is so good this Worlds, because I explained it in like 8 seconds on this or that, where I said Korea, China, Korea, China, Europe, in terms of who's won midseason and
I find it
full
very
seasons
funny
finals.
that you very diligently went through that and made sure it was 100%
It's not that
correct.
I'm just good at memorizing stuff. I learned the alphabet backwards in like 20 minutes.
It's the weirdest flex I've ever heard.
That's the most appropriate use of weird flex, too.
You have you have 1 minute
is a
to make
weird
your
flex.
point, and then I'm sorry, people on Twitter, we have a very special guest who wants to ask one quick question
Yeah.
before we go. And you've all submitted wonderful questions, and we're just hosing you. And
Yeah,
it's happening. I'm sorry.
Blame me. So
I will.
I feel like Korea as a region is just so good at esports. And in so many world championships, they've come in and not necessarily had the right meta read, and they've adjusted for week 2 or for game 2, and they've kind of strengthened throughout the whole event. And I think the game fundamentally changed last year more than it had previously, so that generally the LCK couldn't make those meta adjustments. And even then, I think we underrate how close KT was to winning Worlds.
No, never going to happen.
Yeah, because they were 2-3 over IG, and then IG swept everything from there. So if KT wins one more game in that series, I think they win Worlds. And what's happened this year is I think LCK has completely refreshed. So I think Griffin being the second youngest team at Worlds, Damwon being the 5th youngest team in Worlds, the fact that none of the players that were starting for LCK teams last year are starting for LCK teams this year at Worlds, goes to show that it is kind of the next generation of Korean teams. And if I just look back at any bit of esports history, that means they're going to be the best. I have also watched the games. It's not strictly based off of history. I think they're clean. I think they're not as fast as some of the other regions because I think they still have some dinosaurs playing in that league, right? And no matter how fast and how well they're prepared to take fights, if the teams aren't going to fight them, the game's going to be 2 or 3 minutes slower, which is what it is. But I think the teams that have actually qualified for Worlds are going to be lethal this year. And they're also angry because everyone's saying that LPL is the best. A lot of people are saying LEC is the best. And Korea was the best for half a decade. So they've had an off year, and I think they're going to be back.
Nah, I'm going to prefer to just look exclusively at that year and disregard all the other history because that's what fits in with my narrative.
That's fine.
Thank you. All right, come here, special guest. You can, I don't know, you can like share a chair with me, I guess.
I only have one question for the panel. Hey, everyone.
Get closer to the mic.
You have to get closer to the mic.
So,
Vedius.
every
Wait,
year...
did you introduce
I
yourself?
Can't be hi, everyone. I'm Vedius. Every year at Worlds, things never go as predicted.
That's why I
Literally
predicted
ever.
Fnatic.
That's why we all predicted different things.
No, but what I'm hearing a lot of is LPL, LCK should be favorites in terms of the whole tournament. And I agree from an analyst perspective, that would be the correct choice. But my question is, of the teams most likely to be upset, which are the ones do you think that would be?
Thank you,
think-
Vedius.
Bye.
Goodbye, Vedius.
Of the teams most likely to be upset? Well,
Splicer J team.
as my prediction, I believe that RNG were the team most likely to be upset because I believe that Xiaohu, while he's playing incredibly well, RNG don't seem to trust him. They're like karma every game. Like this guy can play so much and they force him on wave clear priority pushing duty where he's literally just like playing ping pong with a wave.
Could also, I mean, in the same vein, FPX, we don't expect them to drop a game in groups, but you could go into a best of 5 if this Doin B bad meta situation comes out and you could have a situation where he's just irrelevant for an
I'm going to
entire
go with
series.
Damwon because I actually have Damwon super high in my power rankings. However, from what I've seen so far, if 3 members don't show up in a 5-team sport, it's real hard to win games. So there is a world where, TL show up as a team and Showmaker and Nuggery try real hard to run around and butt people and it just don't work.
Klepto does not make you enough money. You have to buff it if you want Damwon to make it
So I'm
out
going to
confidently.
say maybe Damwon, Betty.
Fnatic. I think it's possible. I don't know why I do this to myself. I think it's possible that they won 5, which would be like a huge disappointment.
So you're going the opposite.
So
Everyone else
that
is
would be
being
the
Is it
upset.
cool if I
happy.
just release your
Yeah.
personal address right now? No reason.
Listen, if we're saying it's going to be a close group and a 3-3 or a 4-2 would be an upset, is it really that much of a stretch to say they'd lose another 1 or 2 games?
Did you
I will
watch
support-
They
Clutch?
have to lose a game to clutch, though.
They would.
That could absolutely happen.
God, it could absolutely
Listen to the
happen.
EU
No.
fangirl over there.
Don't
listen to
Sang
me.
does like to flip the coin.
That group is so volatile. If we actually were on the other side where a clutch pops out, it'd be like, yeah, I could see that.
All right. We're like,
Thanks, Frosk.
Because it's like SKT, Fnatic, and RNG are all looking at each other and like trying to make these whatever Who's gonna sit there and be like, I've prepared for clutch. I have exactly the strategy to go for. They're just gonna try to play normal League of Legends.
Cody Sun also didn't die in their best of 5, and Vulcan's better than I thought he was as the dive part of the podcast.
That
I've
group's
really
gonna-
done a bad part of the dive bit.
That group's
you're
going
just
to
supposed to be you. No one told
Yeah.
you to be the dive,
No,
by
yeah.
the way.
I
You're
got
the
some-
OPL part of this podcast.
I
This
really
is a
have to pee,
tri-region
so are we
And
like,
on that note, we are horrendously
sorry,
over
so
time. Thank you so much for listening or watching. That's Frosk's phone, not mine. Thank you, Vedius, for your special guest question. Thank you to everyone who submitted Twitter questions that we didn't answer. I love you. You took time out of your day, and we wasted that 30 seconds. Hopefully, this hour and a half that we're giving you back makes up the difference. We love you. We'll see you later for episode 2 of World's Divephoria Bonanza.